on the West Her hotline. No shortage of news, both in the league and as it pertains to the Bills. Sal, let's first talk about this salary cap news that's within the last hour or so, or just before my show was starting here this afternoon. There has to be welcome news to every team in the league, but especially a team that's been pretty cash-strapped, cap-strapped, like the Bills have been.
Yeah, for sure. The Bills obviously have a lot of challenges with the salary cap right now. This will alleviate a little bit of that, but as far as the playing field, everybody, gets the increase, right? Of course. So,
right.
If teams had $30 million available, now they're going to have $50 million available. So, we're talking a little bit over, 22, 23 million more available per club. But for a team like the Bills, who are right up against it and we're actually projected to be over the cap right now this year, that helps that. But there's moves to be made anyway. And I'm sure the Bills were already planning for a lot of this. But, if you go back a few years ago, over the last several years, there's been plenty of times that we would meet up with Brandon Beane at the Combine. He would say, hey, the cap went up a little bit more than we thought, so we were able to keep another guy or be able to do something we didn't think we'd be able to do. So that probably is what winds up happening here in some capacity as well.
How much, if at all, have you thought about the roster and the work that will need to be done? I mean, I know it's kind of a whirlwind, right? I mean, the season ends, it's sudden, and then it's locker clean out, and then we got a coach fired and the coach hired and news conferences, and we're still in a cycle where we're waiting to see how they're going to fill out the staff. We did learn about a special teams coordinator and offensive coordinator to help Joe Brady out on that side of the ball, and we'll get to that in a moment here, still waiting on the DC. But have you thought at all about, McGovern and Edwards and a contract for Osiris Torrance and what kind of money there might be to go shopping to upgrade receiver and all that kind of stuff?
Oh, I have. The difference is this year, obviously, now we're trying to, figure out who the coaches are going to be before all of that. And I think that has to kind of happen first because you want to figure out what kind of system they run, what their priorities might be, and then you kind of get into it. But I absolutely have. The last 9 years, we haven't had to do this. I haven't had to do this. I've just basically said, okay, Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, here's the roster, here's the contracts, let's see what they have, coming up. Now it's like, there's two parts of it, which is the coaching staff and the firing and the hiring of Joe Brady and hiring the coaching staff. That's just something that takes up your time to kind of cover. But then it's, let's see who they're bringing in to figure out maybe we can gain some pieces of knowledge about what they might want to run. And I think so far, though, what we are figuring out is there's going to be, to me, a pretty good overhaul on defense. And what I mean by that is we already know that there's no more Bobby Babich. He's off and gone to Green Bay. Obviously, Sean McDermott, this was his defense. We know that, there's some guys that have had contracts there on that side of the ball that have fit Sean McDermott's defense that either A, they're a little bit older or their contracts are expired, or maybe B, the Bills just say, look, we're just going to go in a different direction. So I just think that side of the ball is something that I'm going to be looking at a little bit harder and with a little bit more of a let's see what they're going to try to do here type of thing. But on the other side of the ball, you're right. I just don't see, and I didn't see it. I mean, today now you get this news about the increase. Maybe there's a way they can keep one of McGovern or Edwards. I've just felt that they've been kind of trending towards not being able to keep either of them. I think both will get pretty good contracts in free agency. And honestly, the Bills have been grooming guys there. They have Cedric Van Pran Granger that has, can play center. They have Alec Anderson who can play center and guard. They have Chase Lunt who can play guard and tackle. So I just think it feels like they're trending more towards not being able to do that.
Yeah.
And then maybe then you start to talk about how are you going to spend money, which is acquiring free agents, trades, and that's where maybe wide receiver comes in and things like that.
How notable, if at all, did you find it that Anderson was the one who stepped in for a little bit in that Denver game? I think it was that game. It wasn't the Jacksonville game. I just know Anderson took a couple of snaps when McGovern was out, and I had always thought that Cedric Van Pran Granger was the backup center. I don't know, was that a tell at all, or do you think it was just opponent-specific?
I have to go back and remember, was Van Pran Granger active for the game? I think he was, right? I have to make sure he even was active because it could be that too, right? But even if he was, yeah, sure. I mean, you could think about that. I think a lot of times what it is just having a guy that, you are very comfortable with. Alec Anderson's been here an extra year more than Cedric Van Pran Granger. He probably worked, both guard and center throughout the week to understand what's happening there. So I wouldn't read too much into it. I think they like Cedric Van Pran Granger. But, a lot of this is just the new offensive line coach what he wants, right? That's something that's changing now. There's no more Aaron Kromer. Now they're going to have Pat Meyer. And, he comes from an Aaron Kromer background. He's been with Kromer. He's been with different stops. So what does he think about some of these guys? I think everything can kind of be on the table, even independent of, something like that happened.
Sal Capaccio on the West Her Hotline with us here on WGR, or with me. Mike is off here. So what immediate takeaways on, the Carmichael news would have happened, I think, probably before even your Extra Point show, or maybe during your Extra Point show this morning as offensive coordinator, and now we have news about a special teams coordinator too. What can you tell everyone out there about the people that are reported to be joining Joe Brady's staff?
They're a veteran, and it's a good move by Joe Brady to surround himself with coaches who are more experienced than him, much like Sean McDermott did in 2017. In 2017, I think the Bills had the most amount of years added up for all of their assistant coaches in the league. They had Rick Dennison as an offensive coordinator. They had I always forget the offensive line coach now, and I said it yesterday, and he was with the was it Juan Castillo? No, is that his name? Was with the Eagles before that.
Yep.
And then you had, right?
I think Castillo is the guy you wanted. Yeah, I think so.
Yep. Okay. Yep. And then you had Leslie Frazier join, of course, right? He was a big part of Sean's first staff. Rob Boris, who's still on staff, by the way, as far as we know. Kelly Skipper. These were veteran coaches then. Some of them still are, coaching right now. And I think Joe Brady's kind of taking a page from that. Now, the difference was Sean hired a guy like Leslie. Maybe there's still something like that to come, who was a head coach in the league, who he could lean on. Joe said to us yesterday when we were down there, yeah, if you can get a guy like that, it's great, but he's not going to necessarily have to make it a priority to have a guy like that. But I do find it interesting that the first couple of hires we're learning about here, and even Pat Meyer, guys that have been around the league, he's, bringing in people that have experience. So Pat Meyer has been around the league a while. Like I said, he's been offensive line coach at different stops. He coached under Aaron Kromer here. Then you talk about Pete Carmichael. Pete Carmichael, you look at his resume, you'd think he was 70 years old. He's 54. He has been coaching a lot. Right. He's been coaching a long time. He goes back to Drew Brees in San Diego. He's been around the NFL quite a while. And, he was in New Orleans as an offensive coordinator for 15 seasons and working primarily with Sean Payton. And obviously Joe came from there. And, he wasn't calling plays. Sean Payton was. But he's not going to call plays in Buffalo. We know that, right? So I think that's, something that he wanted to make sure that he grabbed somebody that was veteran, somebody he knew that knew him. They could work together, same language, same system. And then the new news coming out, Jeff Rodgers, the special teams coordinator, most recently of the Arizona Cardinals, and poking in on them. He actually did a pretty good job, but last year they were not very good on special teams, and just kind of reading about some of the media and fans in Arizona saying, yeah, it was a bit of a rough year last year because of a lot of injuries, but otherwise they felt he did a pretty good job with the group he had. Interestingly enough, he actually coached in Denver when Matt Prater was the kicker there that broke the record field goal back in, 2013 it might have been, I guess.
Yeah. What does, when a coordinator has that title, an offensive coordinator has that title, but isn't calling the plays, what is that? Just day-to-day game plan stuff? On game day, what is he in? Is he in the guy that's calling plays? Is he in his ear? How does that work? What are his duties, I guess?
Well, Monday through Saturday, he's running the room. He's basically coordinating the offense. He is doing everything in conjunction with, in this case, the head coach is going to call plays. They're going to have a game plan set forth. He's going to present the game plan. Obviously, Joe Brady will be in those rooms, but Joe Brady's got to oversee the entire operation. So he becomes the de facto person in charge, right? He's the offensive coordinator. He's doing everything that Joe Brady wants him to do, that Joe Brady would be doing Monday through Saturday. Once you get to Sunday, that can look a lot different. Some coaches may want him really in touch with the head coach who's calling the plays and giving them certain situations and tendencies to be aware of. Some coaches might want him in touch with maybe the quarterback's coach and thinking about what's happening with the quarterback, what he's seeing there. So that's probably to be determined, whatever Joe Brady wants. But basically Monday through Saturday, he's the coordinator. He's the person helping. He's not necessarily putting the game plan together, but he's making sure that it's being executed the right way during practice.
So we're still waiting on defensive coordinator, and nothing against these other hires. I mean, everything goes in the stew, and everyone has a role, and everyone contributes and matters. But I feel like the attention on defensive coordinator, that having been Sean McDermott's side of the ball, we know that Bobby Babich has departed, and like we talked about when we were discussing the roster a few minutes ago, Sal, that could really be that should be a piece that leaves us a lot of clues about what they may be doing, like philosophically, schematically, what they're going to be about on defense. Do you have a favorite idea, or really are the names that are more familiar to fans, I think, that have been discussed, Raheem Morris, Jim Schwartz, Jim Leonard, I feel like pick one of those guys and I'm fine. I'm wondering how you feel about the search, and I'm guessing there's people outside of those three candidates, because Schwartz I've not even seen attached to the Bills, nor Morris, actually, I don't think.
I like all three of those names. I do, for all the purposes we're talking about, and I agree there's some clues about how you think that Joe Brady's probably thinking about his defense, what Brandon Beane said about alignment, and they talked about defense and the aggressiveness. I mean, the calling card of all of those guys is exactly that. It's aggressive defense. It's getting after the quarterback. Look at the numbers that Jim Leonard's defenses in Denver have been a part of, run by Vance Joseph, but he's been a part of that. I mean, they broke sack records the last couple of years. I think it's interesting that Joe Brady, who had to game plan as an offensive coordinator against the Denver Broncos in the playoffs the last 2 years, immediately identifies, reportedly, Jim Leonard as someone he wants to bring in. I don't think you do that unless you feel that was challenging for you, or you respected, at least in some level, of what you had to go against in that regard. Jim Leonard also, to me, is close enough removed from the game, and the college game, by the way, where he was at Wisconsin, that he might be able to relate to younger players and how they're thinking and some of the new ways of teaching football. There's been a lot of changes over the years. So I like a lot of those aspects that go into it. Raheem Morris is a bit different because he's been around a long time. He's been a coach. He's been a head coach in this league. You want to talk about bringing a guy in to be a head coach in your staff. There's your guy,
that piece right there. Yeah.
That's right. And that could be someone that Joe Brady could lean on. And I do remember when Raheem Morris was even being talked about as a head coach candidate in Atlanta, how much Les Snead in LA was pushing for him. He's like, this guy's great. Like, I don't want to lose him, but he's amazing. Like, he deserves a shot. He's really great at what he does. He's very, very well respected around the league. He's had good defenses, and I don't know if the numbers necessarily always translate. You can parse those things. People look at the rankings, stuff like that, but I think he's done a very good job respectfully with the pieces he's had, what he wants to do philosophically, all those kinds of things that go along with it. So that could be something that you take a look at if you're Joe Brady and you want. And then there's Jim Schwartz, who he also has been a head coach in this league. He also, as Mike rightfully pointed out yesterday, he left Buffalo partly because, hey, Rex Ryan got the job. He didn't. Well, that's not going to mesh. He leaves. Now he's in a situation where, I wanted to be the head man. I mean, I don't want to be scared off by a Jim Schwartz ego necessarily, but I do think you bring someone like Jim Schwartz in the building, you have to understand what goes along with a guy like Jim Schwartz. Like, it's going to be his show, right? He's going to run that side of the ball. I'm not saying Raheem Morris wouldn't, and I'm not saying that Jim Leonard wouldn't, but I think Joe Brady has to be very comfortable with people like that.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Sal Capaccio on the West Her Hotline with us for just a few more minutes here on WGR. I realized, thinking about talking to you today, we visited with you yesterday. Of course, the news conference happened. Josh Allen was there, and he had his own news conference. We never even talked with you about him showing up on crutches and with that walking boot on the foot. I mean, it's the offseason, so no big deal, but that was kind of jarring to see that, like, here we are, a couple of weeks after they played their last game, and he was injured enough that he's on crutches and has a walking boot. It really says a lot, I think, about what he was playing through.
No doubt. And it's jarring, too, because we never see Josh like that, right? Like, we don't see him injured. Josh Allen has currently, knock on some wood there in the studio, please, for me, the current longest active starting streak of any quarterback in the National Football League. It's very important to him. We talked about that, in Week 18. He was dealing with it Week 18 and took that one snap and came out, and there was a lot of debate about that. But, this guy, he prides himself on playing through things. He prides himself on being available. He's a really, really tough dude. He is just built different. And I know we talk about so many guys who they're unavailable. Best ability is availability, but some of these guys, we're talking about, and Dalton Kincaid has been not as available as you wanted. And yesterday was some news, by the way. The Bills are most likely going to pick up his fifth-year option, and then people are like, wait a minute, you're risking that because he hasn't been available. That's how you have to talk about these people. That's the one thing that doesn't come up with Josh Allen ever. That he's always available. He's always playing through things, whether it's a shoulder or a knee, in this case a foot, whatever it is. And you're right, it just kind of underscores what he was actually playing through during those weeks. And you just wonder, would anything have been different in any of these games? I don't want to go pick apart and look at it and say, well, maybe he would they have run him more? You know what I mean? Would there have been a 3rd and 2 where he basically takes off and you run more of a bootleg or something like that? I don't know. But that being said, the good news is Josh Allen is going to be available for everything this offseason. He says it's not going to be a problem with anything this offseason as far as his preparation, workouts, things like that. And, he's going to be a father, and he talked about that as well, and that's a big part of his offseason here. So he's got rehab to do, obviously. He's waiting to become a dad, obviously, and he said everything should line up for him to be ready for anything they do in the offseason.
Yeah, I also don't want to pick apart single plays, but something that he said yesterday, and I don't have the quote, but I think you'll stop me if I get the spirit of the thing wrong here. But talking about how he goes over plays that he could have made that could have been different, and one thing that he said was like, on a given throw, if I'd been better with my feet or done something different with my feet, and that made me think of the Knox play at the end of regulation.
Yep.
Right? Like, yep. I don't know. I haven't gone back to look at it. I'm not, I don't know, it almost feels ghoulish at this point because what's the point, right? But you just wonder if he'd had, if he'd been maybe feeling 100%, maybe that throw is a different outcome. But anyway.
Listen, I agree with you, and I'll go right back to that Cleveland game. I mean, right away, right after the injury happened, he comes out in the second half. There were a couple throws early in the second half that you could, to me, there was a far side overshot somebody. I can't remember, maybe Cooks. And then there was another one where he kind of, was off target. And I think right away you started to see that impacting him because of the foot. And I agree that could have been an issue later on too.
Sal, I know you did the extra point today. I imagine you talked about Alex Tuck and the Sabres and his comment last night in the room about trying to win the cup or going for the cup. We're not just trying to squeeze into the playoffs. I mean, you're not as old as me, but I mean, you've been here through all of this. You've been working here through all of this. And I just, seeing that last night, I couldn't get enough of it. It's just so great to have them playing like this and it not being like some little pocket inside a lost season that's too little too late. Like, they are one of the best teams in the league, I think, at this point.
It's
go ahead.
Unbelievable. I mean, listen, and you're right. I did. I grew up here. I went through all this, and you're right. I don't know if you realize, Bulldog, I moved back to Buffalo just a few months after the last playoff appearance. Like, literally, I moved back, and then the next year is when the drought started. And I've been back here since. And, I flew up from Florida to go to a Cup game in 99, but I've not seen them in the playoffs since I've been back to Buffalo. I have a 12-year-old son. Do the math. Right. They've not made the playoffs in his lifetime, right? I mean, we love going to games. We were at the Canadiens game a couple weeks ago, and he even commented to me something about how, more intense it is. I'm like, this is what it's going to be like. We love this. Let's do this, right? And I love it for him. I love it for that. And for the fact of Alex Tuck to say what he said, two things. Number one is it wasn't just that he said it. If you watch the video, there's just so much conviction in him, right?
Yeah.
That's part of it too. He's not just saying it to be like, oh yeah, we want to win the cup. He's really serious and convicted in what he's saying. And I mean, the seriousness that he's talking about, that's got to resonate in that room. It has to resonate. He's saying, I'm going to lead. You're following, and we're all a part of this, and we're doing this. And the other part is exactly what you said, and I said this today on the Extra Point Show because I did talk about it, which is there's no possible way he's getting traded. I don't care if he has a deal, not a deal. I don't care if they're $1 million. I don't care if they're $10 million apart. He's not getting traded. They're going to keep him. They'll figure it out. And if he winds up walking as a free agent, you live with it. You deal with it. You broke the drought. Let's do it.
That's exactly right. When I saw that last night, I tweeted that right away last night at like 10:15, 10:30, whatever time that would have been after the game. I'm like, that guy can't get traded now. And like, I don't think that's why he's doing it. And I don't know, it also made me think maybe a contract extension is, it's in the wind out there. Like, maybe because he certainly didn't sound like someone eager to leave or that is thinking at all about leaving to talk like that. So maybe they'll get something done here sooner rather than later. We'll see. All right.
No doubt. And I have to tell you, I think about this from all these guys. How many times have we been down this road, not just with free agents, but guys who just say, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. Like, I just think the next few months is such a franchise altering period because of all these guys and what we've seen in the past. And guys say, I don't want to be a part of a rebuild. I want out of here. Name the name, right? We've been down this road before. You keep this up for the next 2 months, that's done. We are done with it. Put it in the garbage. We're moving forward. Darlene, it doesn't matter. Everybody, and I think that's what's super cool.
Beautiful job, Sal. Thank you very much for this, and have yourself a great weekend.
You got it. And while I was on with you, and over the last 5 minutes, I can confirm Jeff Rodgers will be the Bills' new special teams coach coming over from Arizona. I know there's reports out there, but just so you know, I can confirm that is to be the case.
All right, very good. Thank you for that, Sal. Sal Capaccio on the West Her Hotline.